Great. So today I want to talk about something that I've never really talked about before, and that's the issue of male circumcision and a little bit of female. But I have this article pulled up in the background just because I think it kind of helps prove my point in that the title is Regina Woman Suing After Tip of Son's Penis Sliced Off in Botched Circumcision. And this is stuff that happens more than one would think, mainly because it's humans doing it. It's a small thing that they're working with. And the problem with it is if you botch the procedure, the kid's not going to be able to have kids, when he gets older. And that's robbing one of the, one of the most, one of the top things that, as you want to do as a man, that's you're just taking it from him for no reason whatsoever. And I don't want to sound too enthusiastic. Well, I mean, I do want to be enthusiastic, but I don't want to sound like one of the someone who's crazy. But this is something that I have absolutely no idea that goes on, and no idea why more people aren't talking about it. And that I think this is just another example of the whole female male sexism argument, that we have an issue that negatively affects men in every way, shape, and form. But you talk to the average man and they'll defend it. And I think to myself, find me one example in society that negatively affects women, that if you point it out to women, they'll deny it. And that's the issue of like circumcision. You talk to men and it's like they don't care. But like just imagine the pay gap was real, and imagine that you try and talk to women about it and they're like, "Oh, I don't care. It doesn't bother me." Like that's the issue we have here. And the most common arguments for it are all easily debunked. The first one you'll always hear, not from doctors but from men, is that they don't remember it, and that's a horrible, horrible argument on two levels. Number one, if you circumcised girls when they were little, days old, they wouldn't remember it either. So why can't we do it to girls? Like those same people would more than likely argue against pro female circumcision, but yet women wouldn't remember it either if you did it to them when they were days old. So that's a horrible argument in that case. And the other case being, well, their argument is they don't remember it, but let's say, for example, I drug and rape someone, and I, use protection and all that stuff, and make sure that they're out the entire time. Well, they don't remember it. I use protection, all that. You're violating someone's body by circumcising them, the same as if you're raping them. So, again, that's two arguments that completely, completely destroy that idea. That it's absolutely insane. Another common one is the whole UTI. It reduces it, which, number one, it doesn't really reduce it that much. Number two, UTIs are easily prevented, or not prevented, but treated by antibiotics. And girls get UTIs at a higher rate than boys. And again, no one's arguing to circumcise girls. So it's something it disproportionately affects men, and nobody cares. And it's a pretty insane way in society that we do this kind of stuff. And I've heard stories like this. I've heard, this one I just came across it. I've seen a call-in show on Stefan Molyneux's YouTube channel. Someone else had this happen, and the boy that had it happen to him actually was doing some research, and they found out that it was a pretty staggeringly high amount of boys that this happens to them. And the other problem too, in being there was a documentary on Netflix about it too, that a lot of boys report like nightmares, trauma, all that kind of stuff, to psychologists, and it's somewhat of a growing concern that on that documentary you would see if you watched it. And that I also like that documentary too because they pretty much went through every argument that the pro-circumcision crowd had, and in my mind thoroughly debunked it. I think that the main ones are for sure thoroughly debunked. The other problem with it being too is that the reason for doing it has changed tons of times over the over history. Basically, it was, a lot of different reasons for doing it. So if it was beneficial, then you wouldn't have to change your reasoning for doing it. It would be the same beneficial reasons, right? But they don't do it. And like I said, examples like this happen all the time, and would you want to take that risk? I think the number was like 1 in 1,000 or something like that. But again, if they screw it up, you're not going to be able to have kids. You're not. I mean, you're probably not going to be able to have sex. I know that the the guy in the call-in show said that no, he can't even get hard because it's painful. Like that's like it makes no sense. Like, and the problem too is that the same people that argue for it would argue against it for girls, while simultaneously anyone arguing for it for girls would use the same arguments that they use to argue for it for guys. So it makes no sense. The other thing too that I thought they would mention is that I seen interviews of some people in Africa, or in the documentary they did interviews from people in Africa. I think it was that practice female circumcision, and the girls they interviewed, all of them they answered questions exactly the same as how boys that do it answer it. It's, oh well, I don't remember it. It's accepted as a societal norm, all that kind of stuff, and to the point to where they did these surveys and they found that you couldn't even tell the difference between a girl answering it and a guy answering it, which basically proves my point that if you do it to girls when they're little, they wouldn't remember it either. So using that argument for making it okay is a brutal, horrible argument. Not to mention there's also the argument of just because you don't remember it doesn't mean that something's okay. Like, if you beat a little baby, they're probably not going to remember it when they get older, but it still makes it wrong. Like, that's the fact that people think that that's okay. And I think most of them know deep down that it's not. They just don't have a good argument against it, which I think is just proving my argument even more. That if they had a good argument, they would have a good argument that doesn't contradict itself in more than one way. Like, when your argument contradicts itself in more than one way, then like I don't think I could think of a worse argument if I possibly tried. So I don't want to talk too much more about this, but I think it's something that's important because it's something that disproportionately affects men. And it's just another example of disproving the idea of the whole female sexism narrative, that it's not true. And like I said, it's actually the opposite. It's almost all sexism now disproportionately negatively affects men, not women. This is just another example of it. So I'll leave it there. If you like the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.